Every year, Americans spend over $400 billion on healthcare, prescription drugs, supplements in bright plastic bottles, functional foods engineered in laboratories and marketed with claims that change every decade. And yet chronic disease rates keep climbing. Inflammation keeps rising. Gut disorders, autoimmune conditions, metabolic disease, all trending in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, there is a document that has survived 3,000 years. It has been translated into every major language on Earth. And buried inside its pages, not as metaphor, not as allegory, but as direct instruction, is a precise description of what to eat, how to prepare it, and why it matters. The Bible isn't just a spiritual text. It is, among other things, the world's oldest nutritional archive. And modern researchers, not theologians, but biochemists, cardiologists, and gut health specialists, keep arriving at the same conclusion. The people who built their diets around these foods were doing something that modern nutritional science is still working to fully explain. Today, we are going through 12 of those meals. Specific preparations. Ancient combinations that functioned not as food in the way we think of food today, but as daily maintenance protocols for the human body. Stay with us for number 1. It comes directly from Deuteronomy chapter 8, where God names 7 specific foods for the Promised Land, and when modern researchers analyzed all 7 together as a nutritional system, what they found was not what anyone expected. And pay close attention to number 6. There is a story embedded there, a king, a death sentence, and a prescription made from something you can find in any farmer's market that will change how you read that passage forever. 12 meals. Thousands of years of evidence. Let's get into it. Number 12. Cucumber, mint, and fermented goat yogurt bowl. The cooling meal that rebuilt the gut. In Numbers chapter 11, the Israelites wandering the wilderness stopped to grieve. Not their circumstances, but their food. Specifically, they list the foods they have left behind in Egypt: cucumbers, leeks, onions, garlic, melons. The text records this as complaint. But read it nutritionally, and something else emerges. These people knew exactly what their bodies needed. They had built a diet around hydration, gut support, and anti-inflammatory daily staples, and they felt the loss of those foods in their bodies. Cucumbers are over 96% water. In a desert climate where heat exhaustion was a daily reality and water sources were unreliable, this mattered enormously. But that's not the whole story. Cucumbers also contain cucurbitacins, bitter compounds concentrated just beneath the skin, that have shown anti-inflammatory activity. They contain silica, a trace mineral that supports connective tissue integrity, and vitamin K at levels that contribute meaningfully to bone metabolism. Here is something most people discard with the peel: the highest concentration of the cucumber's most bioactive compounds. Ancient people ate the skin. Modern preparation often removes it. Pair sliced cucumbers with fermented goat's milk yogurt, and the combination shifts entirely. Goat's milk has a fundamentally different protein architecture than commercial cow's milk. Its primary casein is of a type that research suggests produces significantly less inflammatory response in the gut lining. Fermented into yogurt, it becomes a living culture delivery system. Beneficial bacteria, primarily lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains, that colonize the digestive tract, train the mucosal immune system, and produce short-chain fatty acids, including butyrate, which is the preferred energy source for the cells lining the colon. Add fresh mint, specifically the volatile oil menthol, and something measurable happens. Menthol activates kappa-opioid receptors in the stomach lining, producing a genuine smooth muscle relaxation response that reduces cramping, eases bloating, and calms the digestive tract. This is not folk belief. It is confirmed pharmacology. And it explains why mint has appeared in the medical traditions of virtually every ancient civilization that encountered it: Egyptian papyri, Ayurvedic texts, Chinese materia medica, Greco-Roman herbal literature. Preparation: take roughly 2 cups of full-fat fermented goat yogurt. It should be thick, slightly tangy, alive. Slice half a cucumber into thin rounds without peeling. Tear a generous handful of fresh mint leaves. Combine. Add a fine drizzle of cold-pressed olive oil and a pinch of unrefined sea salt. Serve cool, not cold. Eat it in the morning before heat builds, the way people in hot climates have eaten it for centuries. The Israelites in the wilderness missed this meal. They weren't being dramatic. They understood, without scientific language, that they were missing something their bodies depended on. Number 11. Garlic and herb lentil soup. The immune protocol in a bowl. If you were tasked with designing the single most immune-supportive meal from only ingredients available in the biblical world, you would likely build something very close to this. Lentils appear throughout Scripture, most memorably in the bowl of red stew for which Esau traded his birthright in Genesis 25. They were the protein backbone of ancient diets across the entire Near East. And with reason. Lentils deliver complete plant protein containing all essential amino acids. They provide slow-burning complex carbohydrates, an extraordinary mineral profile, including iron, folate, manganese, and phosphorus, and fiber that selectively feeds the gut bacteria responsible for much of the body's immune surveillance. But what happens when you add garlic, generously, the way ancient people actually used it, not the half-clove the modern recipe suggests, transforms this from excellent to something significantly more potent. When garlic is crushed or chopped, two compounds that are stored separately in the raw clove come into contact. The result is allicin, a sulfur compound with documented broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity against bacteria, viruses, fungi. Allicin degrades quickly with heat, which means the ancient technique of adding crushed raw garlic at the very end of cooking. It was functional chemistry preserved in culinary tradition. The Ebers Papyrus, an Egyptian medical document dating to roughly 1550 BCE, among the oldest surviving medical texts on Earth, lists garlic in over 22 separate preparations for conditions ranging from infection to heart disease. This was systematic pharmacology recorded across generations of clinical observation. To build this properly, begin with 1 cup of red or green lentils, simmered in good broth until tender. In the final minutes of cooking, bloom 1 teaspoon each of ground cumin and ground coriander in olive oil. Cumin contains the compound thymoquinone, which has shown meaningful effects on blood sugar response and digestive enzyme stimulation in peer-reviewed research. Coriander contains linalool, with well-documented calming effects on gut motility. Add 6 to 8 cloves of garlic, crushed to paste, in the last 2 minutes of cooking. Finish with cold-pressed olive oil poured over the surface after removing from heat. This is what makes the fat-soluble compounds in every other ingredient bioavailable. The olive oil is not garnish. It is a delivery mechanism. This soup has existed in recognizable form for 5,000 years. It does not need rebranding. It needs a pot on your stove. Number 10. Pomegranate and whole barley grain bowl. The fruit carved into the temple. King Solomon's temple had 200 carved pomegranates worked into its bronze pillars. The high priest's robe was hemmed with pomegranates in blue, purple, and scarlet thread. This fruit was embedded in the most sacred architecture and ceremonial garments in the ancient world, not for decoration. Modern antioxidant research has spent decades trying to reverse engineer why. Pomegranates contain L-gitannins, compounds found in almost no other food on Earth at comparable concentration. In the human digestive tract, L-gitannins are converted by specific gut bacteria into urolithins, particularly urolithin A, which has demonstrated powerful mitochondrial protective effects in early research and showed enough promise to sustain substantial clinical investigation. Studies have found that pomegranate juice reduces systolic blood pressure, protects arterial endothelium from oxidative damage, and reduces circulating markers of systemic inflammation, including CRP and IL-6. Its antioxidant concentration outranks red wine, green tea, and blueberries, not by a small margin. Build this into a grain bowl with whole barley as the base. Barley contains the highest concentration of beta-glucan fiber found in any grain. This specific soluble fiber has been researched so extensively that food manufacturers are legally permitted by the FDA to print verified heart health claims on products containing it. Beta-glucan forms a slow-moving viscous gel in the digestive tract that mechanically slows glucose absorption, feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and binds LDL cholesterol. The pomegranate seeds scattered through the grain do something visually and nutritionally. Each seed is wrapped in its juice-filled aril, delivering L-gitannins alongside vitamin C, vitamin K, folate, and potassium. Dress everything with cold-pressed olive oil. The monounsaturated fats enhance absorption of the fat-soluble antioxidants from both the grain and the fruit. Add a handful of walnuts for omega-3 fatty acids. Finish with fresh herbs. The people who built pomegranates into their most sacred spaces weren't making an aesthetic choice. They were honoring something they had watched across generations. Sometimes the oldest observations are the most reliable ones. Number 9. Dates stuffed with almonds, walnuts, and pistachios. The desert survival food science finally caught up to. The date palm is mentioned more frequently than any other fruit-bearing tree across biblical literature. Jericho was called the city of palms. Deborah judged Israel beneath one. The righteous are compared to them in Psalm 92. This wasn't poetry accumulating by chance. It reflected the absolute centrality of this fruit to life, travel, and survival in an arid world. Desert traders, soldiers, and pilgrims crossing the Judean wilderness carried dates because dates kept them moving when nothing else would. A handful contained enough natural glucose and fructose to restore depleted blood sugar within minutes. Rapid, reliable energy that did not require cooking, did not spoil in heat, and weighed almost nothing relative to its caloric density. But unlike refined sugar, that energy arrived packaged. Dates provide magnesium, potassium, copper, manganese, B vitamins, and fiber that slows and shapes the absorption of their own sugars. Multiple peer-reviewed clinical trials have found that women who consume dates regularly in the final 4 weeks of pregnancy experience significantly higher cervical dilation at admission, greater rates of spontaneous labor onset, and shorter active labor phases. The mechanism is not fully understood, but the effect has been replicated consistently enough to sustain serious obstetric research interest. Now stuff those dates with a mixed filling of almonds, walnuts, and pistachios, all three foods documented throughout the ancient world, all three present in the biblical text. The healthy fats and protein from the nuts slow the release of the date's natural sugars, smoothing what would otherwise be a rapid blood glucose rise into a sustained, even energy curve. Rapid fuel becomes strategic fuel. Pistachios contain lutein and zeaxanthin, the two carotenoids specifically concentrated in the macula of the human eye, at levels that have led researchers to designate them among the top prebiotic foods for gut microbiome diversity. Walnuts are among the few plant sources of ALA omega-3 fatty acids and have shown clinically meaningful effects on LDL cholesterol. Almonds deliver vitamin E in its alpha-tocopherol form, the most bioavailable form for human tissue, alongside magnesium and fiber. Preparation: select large medjool dates, still soft and yielding. Slice lengthwise and remove the pit. Fill the cavity with a single almond, a half walnut, and one pistachio. Press gently closed. Store at room temperature. Eat 2 before physical exertion. Eat 2 when hunger arrives between meals. This is portable medicine in the oldest sense of that word. Ramadan has traditionally been broken with dates for over 1400 years. The wisdom embedded in that practice is no longer mysterious. Number 8. Grape and goat cheese plate with hyssop and olives. The combination immunologists are studying right now. The vine is one of the most spiritually loaded images in all of Scripture. Noah planted a vineyard as his first act after the flood, his first cultivation of the renewed earth. Grapes appear at the Passover table, in the Song of Solomon, at Cana, in the vineyards of the prophets, and in some of the most theologically significant passages across both testaments. This plant kept drawing attention across every context. Something about it commanded notice. Fresh red and purple grapes are among the richest sources of resveratrol found in whole foods, concentrated primarily in the skin. Resveratrol activates a family of proteins called sirtuins, particularly SIRT1, that regulate cellular aging, mitochondrial function. The research is still developing, but it has been active and consistent enough to generate substantial scientific interest. Beyond resveratrol, grape skin and seeds contain quercetin, camphorol, and proanthocyanidins that function synergistically. Eating them whole, not juiced, not refined, preserves the fiber and the seed compounds that processing removes. Pair fresh grapes with aged goat cheese, a concentrated, fermented form of probiotic-rich goat's milk, where the aging process has concentrated beneficial bacterial cultures alongside medium-chain fatty acids that the liver processes directly for energy, rather than storing as fat. The combination of polyphenols from the grapes and live cultures from the fermented cheese is precisely the pairing that gut immune axis researchers are now studying for its effects on regulatory T-cell populations, the immune cells responsible for distinguishing threats from the body's own tissue. Add fresh hyssop. This herb appears at the Passover. The doorposts were marked with blood applied on a bunch of hyssop. It appears at the crucifixion. It appears in Psalm 51. Hyssop contains penocamphone and isophenocamphone, volatile compounds with documented activity against respiratory pathogens and with expectorant properties that explain its use in every major ancient healing tradition from Egypt to Rome. Add a handful of whole olives. Their contribution of oleuropein, the bitter polyphenol that gives quality olive oil its characteristic throat burn, has shown meaningful antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties in laboratory and early clinical research. This entire plate assembles in 4 minutes. Simple ingredients, the way they have been eaten for 3,000 years. What looks like a casual appetizer is actually a precisely layered biochemical system. Number 7. Slow-roasted lamb with dates, hyssop, and rosemary. The feast meal that rebuilt the body. Lamb is the most ceremonially significant animal in all of Scripture. The Passover lamb. The ram provided at the last moment for Abraham. The sacrificial system built around it. The title given to the central figure of the New Testament. Its presence at ancient tables was never incidental. It marked moments of survival, restoration, covenant, and consecration. And underneath the ceremony was nutrition so dense it was irreplaceable for people living hard physical lives. Slow-roasted lamb delivers B12 at levels that support neurological function. B12 is the nutrient most commonly deficient in people over 60, and it is almost exclusively available in animal foods in the forms the human nervous system can actually use. It provides B6 for amino acid metabolism and immune function, riboflavin for cellular energy production, zinc in its most bioavailable form, heme-bound zinc from animal tissue, is absorbed at rates 2 to 4 times higher than plant-sourced zinc, and zinc is the mineral most directly linked to immune response speed and wound healing efficiency. The iron in lamb is heme iron. The body absorbs it at rates 15 to 35% higher than non-heme iron from plant sources. For anyone recovering from illness, worn down by sustained labor, or running the kind of chronic deficit that doesn't announce itself dramatically but accumulates quietly across months, this meal was a systematic rebuild. Ancient communities didn't need a diagnosis to recognize when someone was depleted, and they didn't need a prescription to address it. The dates served alongside are not garnish. Fruit acids, specifically malic acid found in dates, have been shown in research to enhance the absorption of non-heme iron and appear to support heme iron uptake as well. The combination makes the lamb's iron more bioavailable than the lamb alone. This is food pairing as functional nutrition practiced for millennia before anyone had language for the mechanism. Roasted over rosemary and hyssop, the herbs infuse the meat with volatile antimicrobial compounds, rosmarinic acid, carnosic acid, thymol, that also reduce lipid oxidation during cooking and make the animal fats in the meat easier to metabolize. This was not accidental seasoning. It was accumulated practical wisdom about how to make powerful foods safer and more effective. Preparation: a bone-in lamb shoulder, scored and rubbed with crushed garlic, rosemary, dried hyssop. Roast low and slow, 200 degrees Celsius, for the first 30 minutes to set the exterior. Then reduce to 160 for 3 to 4 hours until the collagen has broken down completely. Rest for 20 minutes before serving. Place medjool dates warmed in a dry pan alongside. This meal rebuilds what life has taken from you. Number 6. Figs and almonds with raw honey. The prescription that saved a king. Here is a detail buried in Scripture that most people walk directly past. 2 Kings, chapter 20. King Hezekiah is dying. The text describes a severe infection, translated as a boil, but likely a deep ulcer or systemic abscess that has become life-threatening. The king receives word from the prophet Isaiah that his death is imminent. He prays. And then Isaiah returns with a two-part response. First, a promise of recovery, and second, an instruction that is startlingly specific, startlingly practical. He ordered a poultice of pressed figs applied directly to the wound. The king recovered. For centuries, this was read as divine favor expressed through ordinary means. Then modern biochemistry began examining what figs actually contain. Figs produce ficin, a proteolytic enzyme, meaning it breaks down proteins, including the denatured tissue surrounding infected wounds. It is in the same enzymatic family as papain from papaya and bromelain from pineapple, both of which have been formally studied for wound debridement. The milky latex of fresh figs contains compounds that have demonstrated inhibitory effects against bacterial strains in laboratory studies. Isaiah's prescription was not mystical. It was biochemically defensible. And the ancient world appears to have known this through centuries of careful observation that preceded any formal trial. Eaten as food, figs do something entirely different but equally significant. They are among the most mineral-dense fruits available, exceptionally high in calcium at levels that rival dairy, and providing magnesium, potassium, and iron in concentrations that made them a functional micronutrient system in a world without supplements. The soluble fiber in figs, primarily pectin, has shown prebiotic activity, selectively feeding bifidobacterium strains that produce anti-inflammatory short-chain fatty acids in the colon. Pair figs with almonds, ground into a rough paste the way they would have been prepared in the ancient world, or simply whole and eaten alongside, and the combination becomes something greater than either alone. Almonds deliver vitamin E in its alpha-tocopherol form, the fat-soluble antioxidant that protects cellular membranes from oxidative damage. They provide magnesium at levels that contribute meaningfully to the daily requirement and are associated with improved insulin sensitivity and reduced cardiovascular risk. They provide protein, monounsaturated fats, and prebiotic fiber that has shown specific effects on gut microbiome diversity. Add a single teaspoon of raw, unfiltered honey, possibly cloudy, possibly crystallized, not the clear filtered product in the plastic bear, and the combination shifts again. Raw honey contains hydrogen peroxide, released enzymatically, along with methylglyoxal and defensins, antimicrobial compounds that have demonstrated genuine clinical efficacy for wound infections in modern hospital settings, particularly for antibiotic-resistant strains. The ancient world applied honey directly to wounds. Modern wound care specialists at hospitals in Europe and Australia are doing the same, with peer-reviewed clinical data to support it. The almond blossom was carved into the menorah, the sacred lampstand at the center of Israel's worship. Aaron's rod, the sign of priestly authority, budded with almond blossoms. These were not arbitrary choices. The ancient world built sacred things around foods they understood, without modern vocabulary, to carry life-giving properties. A king's life was saved by a fig poultice. And the meal that follows from that moment, figs, almonds, raw honey, is one of the most nutritionally complete three-ingredient combinations ever assembled. If this kind of ancient knowledge resonates with you, the idea that Scripture contains nutritional intelligence that modern science is still catching up to, hit like and subscribe, because what we're covering next goes even deeper. Number 5. Roasted chickpeas and herb olive salad. 10,000 years of evidence. There is no single dramatic moment in Scripture for the chickpea. No miracle, no vision, no prophet singling it out by name. It was simply always there, ground into flour, boiled into stews, eaten whole at tables across the ancient Near East for at least 10,000 years. And that's the story. Foods do not persist across 100 centuries unless something about them genuinely works, reliably, for the people who eat them. Chickpeas have a glycemic index so low, typically between 28 and 36, that they produce almost no blood sugar disruption despite their carbohydrate content. Their resistant starch, carbohydrate that human digestive enzymes cannot break down, passing intact to the colon, feeds specific bacterial populations, particularly Faecalibacterium prosnitzi, which produces butyrate and has been identified as one of the most consistent markers distinguishing healthy gut microbiomes from those associated with inflammatory disease. Regular chickpea consumption has been linked in multiple population studies to reduce systemic inflammation, improved insulin sensitivity, and lower LDL cholesterol independent of other dietary factors. Dressed with cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil, the combination does something that neither food accomplishes as effectively alone. Olive oil contains oleic acid, a monounsaturated fat that increases the bioavailability of fat-soluble anti-inflammatory compounds in the chickpeas, alongside oleocanthal, the compound that mimics ibuprofen's mechanism at the COX-1 and COX-2 enzyme level, and that has become one of the most studied natural anti-inflammatory agents in current nutritional research. 3 to 4 tablespoons of quality extra virgin olive oil daily delivers oleocanthal at concentrations. Add fresh hyssop, mint, or coriander. Each brings specific volatile oils, pinocamphone, menthol, linalool, with documented antimicrobial and digestive support activity. Squeeze half a lemon over the finished dish. The vitamin C in the lemon juice enhances iron absorption from the chickpeas by converting non-heme iron to a more bioavailable form, a function the ancient world discovered through observation and practice, without knowledge of iron chemistry. Preparation: drain and rinse 2 cans of cooked chickpeas, or cook dried chickpeas until just tender. Toss while still warm with 4 tablespoons cold-pressed olive oil, the juice of 1 lemon, 2 crushed garlic cloves, generous fresh herbs, and a pinch of cumin and sea salt. Let rest for 10 minutes before eating. The chickpeas absorb the oil as they cool. Modern epidemiology has found that consuming legumes regularly is the single dietary habit most consistently associated with longevity across the world's longest-lived populations, in Sardinia, Okinawa, Loma Linda, and the Greek islands alike. Not a supplement, not a program, just legumes eaten daily for a lifetime. The simplest foods eaten with the most consistency turned out to be the most powerful ones. Number 4. Whole barley bread with cold-pressed olive oil. The daily bread that was actually medicine. Most modern people think of bread as filler, a vehicle for something more important. And the specific bread they ate every single day was doing something inside the human body that took modern nutritional science. When Jesus feeds 5,000 people in the Gospel of John chapter 6, the loaves are not made from wheat. They are made from barley, a detail the text specifies precisely. Barley was the grain of farmers, soldiers, and laborers throughout the ancient world. It was eaten by people doing hard physical work, across long days, in demanding climates. Its dominance wasn't poverty. It was performance. Barley contains the highest concentration of beta-glucan-soluble fiber found in any grain on Earth. The scientific research on this compound is extensive enough that the FDA has approved verified health claims for cholesterol reduction and blood sugar management on products containing it, one of a very small number of specific. Beta-glucan forms a viscous gel in the upper digestive tract that mechanically slows glucose absorption, preventing the rapid blood sugar spikes that damage blood vessels and drive metabolic dysfunction. It selectively feeds lactobacillus and bifidobacterium populations in the colon. And it binds bile acids, which are produced from LDL cholesterol, for removal from circulation, forcing the liver to draw down circulating cholesterol to produce more. But the bread itself is only half the story. Stone-ground whole-grain barley bread made with cold-pressed olive oil worked generously into the dough, not as a thin surface coating, but incorporated at mixing and poured over the top before serving, delivers something the barley alone cannot accomplish. Extra virgin olive oil of genuine quality contains oleocanthal at concentrations that inhibit the same inflammatory enzymes, same pathway. No gastric irritation. No side effects at food doses. And consumed daily, over months and years, the cumulative anti-inflammatory effect appears in population health data as dramatically reduced rates of cardiovascular disease, certain cancers, and neurodegenerative conditions in Mediterranean populations. Here is what most people miss about oleocanthal. It is destroyed by heat. Extra virgin olive oil poured over warm bread, not cooked in it at high temperature, but incorporated and then served, preserves the compound. This is why the ancient practice of dipping bread in oil, rather than cooking with it at high heat, was not just culinary preference. It was functional preservation of the most important compound in the oil. Preparation: for the closest modern equivalent, source whole grain barley flour or stone ground whole wheat with barley mixed in. Mix the flour with water, a pinch of unrefined salt, and a generous pour of olive oil worked directly into the dough. Bake at moderate heat, roughly 180 degrees Celsius, until firm. Slice while still warm. Pour cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil generously over the cut surface. The oil should pool slightly in the bread. Eat it as the everyday bread it was, with soup, with cheese, with olives, with whatever the meal required. This was the bread of prophets and fishermen. Dense, dark, oil-soaked. Not fancy. Among the most effective cardiovascular interventions ever practiced without anyone ever calling it that. Number 3. Lentil and wild herb stew with bone broth base. The red stew worth more than a birthright. Genesis 25 records one of the most commercially charged transactions in Scripture. Esau returns from the field exhausted. The text is specific about his physical depletion, and Jacob is cooking a red stew. Esau says, famously, that he is about to die of hunger. The negotiation that follows results in Esau trading his birthright for a bowl of food. Most people read this as Esau being rash or short-sighted. Read it nutritionally and a different picture emerges. A man in genuine physical depletion, who knew from experience what this particular bowl would do for him, valued what he needed in that moment over an abstract future claim. Red lentils cook faster than any other legume. They dissolve into a thick, easily digestible porridge within 20 minutes. Their protein is nearly complete. Their iron content is high. Their folate levels are among the highest found in any plant food, which matters particularly for cellular repair and DNA synthesis. In a state of physical exhaustion, this bowl would have produced a measurable restoration of energy within the hour. The broth base transforms the dish further. Bone broth, produced by simmering animal bones for 8 to 12 hours, releases collagen hydrolysate, glycine, proline, and glucosamine into the liquid. These compounds are the raw materials the body uses for connective tissue repair, intestinal lining maintenance, and joint cartilage regeneration. They are not bioavailable from plant sources. Ancient people across virtually every food culture on Earth made bone broth Egyptian, Chinese, Ayurvedic, Mesoamerican. This convergence across unconnected civilizations is itself evidence of a perceived benefit. Preparation. Begin with 2 cups of quality bone broth, ideally homemade, at minimum from a source that lists actual bones as the primary ingredient. Bring to a simmer. Add 1 cup of red lentils, 1 large onion diced, 4 garlic cloves crushed, 1 teaspoon cumin, half a teaspoon coriander, and a generous pinch of turmeric. The curcumin in turmeric is fat-soluble and poorly absorbed without fat, which is why finishing with olive oil is not optional. Simmer 20 minutes until lentils dissolve. Add a handful of wild herbs, hyssop if available, otherwise thyme or oregano. Pour 2 tablespoons of cold-pressed olive oil over the surface after removing from heat. Squeeze fresh lemon. Eat it warm. Eat it when depleted. Eat it regularly. Esau understood its value completely. He may have been rash in his negotiation, but he was not wrong about the bowl. Number 2. Olive, walnut, and herb tabouleh with whole wheat bulgur. The living salad of the ancient world. Tabouleh in its original form bears little resemblance to what supermarkets sell today. The modern version is predominantly grain, largely bulgur, with herbs as a token addition. The ancient preparation inverts this ratio completely. Fresh parsley was the dominant ingredient, with grain as the minor supporting element. That inversion is nutritionally significant. Fresh flat-leaf parsley contains the highest concentration of vitamin K found in any commonly available food. 100 grams provides over 500% of the daily requirement. Vitamin K2, converted from K1 by gut bacteria, is the form that directs calcium into bone, rather than arterial walls. This distinction between calcification of arteries and calcification of bone is one of the most important and least discussed topics in modern cardiovascular research. Populations with high vitamin K intake consistently show lower rates of arterial calcification independent of total calcium intake. Parsley also provides flavonoids, particularly apigenin and luteolin, that have shown anti-inflammatory, anti-anxiety, and neuroprotective effects in emerging research. And here is something most people overlook entirely. The stem of flat-leaf parsley contains higher concentrations of these flavonoids than the leaf. The part most people discard is the most active. Build the salad with whole wheat bulgur, not white refined grain, but whole wheat bulgur that retains the German brand with their B vitamins, zinc, and fiber intact. Add chopped walnuts for their ALA omega-3 fatty acids and ellagic acid. Add whole olives, pitted and roughly chopped, contributing oleuropein and monounsaturated fats. Add generous fresh mint and flat-leaf parsley, using the stems, chopped fine. Dress with cold-pressed olive oil and fresh lemon juice in roughly equal parts. Let it rest for 30 minutes before eating. The lemon juice gently acidifies the grain, reducing the phytic acid content. Phytic acid is the compound in whole grains. Ancient preparations involving acid soaking or fermentation of grains were addressing this exact nutritional concern without knowing its name. Ibn Sina, the 11th century Persian physician, whose canon of medicine remained the primary medical text in European and Islamic universities for 6 centuries, specifically recommended combinations of fresh herbs, grains, and olive oil for what he described as inflammation of the blood. He was describing a phenomenon that modern medicine now calls chronic systemic inflammation. He was treating it with tabouleh. Number 1. The 7 Sacred Foods Feast Bowl. The meal commanded in Deuteronomy. And here is the one that changes how you read everything else. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 8. God is speaking to Moses about the Promised Land, the places people are being led toward after 40 years in the wilderness. And rather than describing it in the broad language of abundance, a land of rivers, a land of plenty, he becomes extraordinarily precise. He lists 7 specific foods by name: wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olive oil, dates. Scholars have read this passage for 3,000 years as agricultural description, evidence that the land was capable of sustaining life, a poetic catalog of fertility. That reading is correct, but it is not complete. Because when modern nutritional researchers have analyzed these 7 foods together, not as a poetic list, but as a nutritional system, what they found is not something easily attributed to coincidence. These 7 foods, eaten together in a single bowl, form one of the most nutritionally complete combinations ever assembled from whole food sources. Wheat and barley together supply complementary proteins. The amino acids limited in one grain are available in the other, alongside beta-glucan fiber, B vitamins spanning the entire family, and slow-burning complex carbohydrates that sustain mental and physical performance across hours without blood-gar disruption. Grapes, specifically the skin and seeds of dark grapes, eaten whole, deliver resveratrol, quercetin, and proanthocyanidins that activate cellular repair pathways and provide cardiovascular protection at multiple points simultaneously. Figs supply the specific minerals the grains and fruits lack in sufficient quantities: calcium, magnesium, potassium, the electrolyte triad essential for cardiac function, muscle contraction, nerve transmission. They fill the mineral gaps in the bowl as precisely as if the list was designed with those gaps in mind. Pomegranates deliver an antioxidant concentration that outranks virtually every other fruit on Earth, alongside L-glutanins that the gut converts into urolithins, compounds with mitochondrial protective effects and anti-inflammatory activity that researchers are only beginning to characterize. The pomegranate in this bowl is not redundant with the grapes. Their antioxidant compounds operate on different molecular targets and appear, in early research, to produce synergistic effects greater than either alone. Olives, eaten whole, not just pressed, deliver oleuropein alongside vitamin E and oleic acid. But their most important function in this bowl may be structural. The monounsaturated fats in the olives make every fat-soluble compound in the other 6 foods dramatically more bioavailable. Resveratrol, vitamin E, carotenoids, fat-soluble anti-inflammatory compounds. The olives don't just contribute their own nutrition. They unlock the nutrition of everything surrounding them. Dates provide rapid natural energy from glucose and fructose alongside fiber that prevents blood sugar spikes, potassium for blood pressure regulation, tannins with antimicrobial activity, and magnesium for muscle and nerve function. Here is what the researchers found when they analyzed this system as a whole rather than its components individually. Each food provides what the others lack. The amino acid profiles are complementary. The fat-soluble vitamins from the olives are matched with water-soluble vitamins from the fresh produce. The anti-inflammatory compounds from pomegranates, grapes, and olives appear to operate on different pathways and may work synergistically, producing an anti-inflammatory effect. The minerals from the figs and dates cover gaps that the grains and fruits don't adequately address. The fiber from multiple sources feeds different gut bacterial populations, producing a more diverse and stable microbiome. This is not a coincidence. Or rather, whether or not you believe it was designed, it functions as though it was. Build this bowl today. Use whole grain barley or bulgur wheat as the base. Scatter fresh dark grapes, halved. Add sliced figs, ripe, yielding. Scatter pomegranate seeds throughout. Place a handful of whole olives alongside. Add 2 or 3 medjool dates on the edge of the bowl. Finish with cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil poured generously over everything. Do not use heat. Pour the oil cold and eat immediately. And eat it slowly. Because you are eating something that 3,000 years of human observation, cross-cultural agricultural practice, and increasingly modern nutritional research all point toward with unusual convergence. Cancer researchers studying polyphenol synergies arrive here. Cardiologists studying Mediterranean dietary patterns arrive here. Gut microbiome researchers studying fiber diversity arrive here. Longevity epidemiologists studying the world's longest-lived populations arrive here. They keep arriving where the ancient world was already standing. Here is the thing that matters most, and it is the thing this entire list has been building toward. Every preparation described in this video has one thing in common. The foods are whole, unrefined, minimally processed, consumed close to the form in which they were grown. The allicin in garlic is destroyed by sustained heat. The oleocanthal in olive oil is degraded above 70 degrees Celsius. The resveratrol in grape skin is stripped in commercial juice processing. The L-glutanins in pomegranate are reduced dramatically by pasteurization. The beta-glucan in barley is diminished in refined flour. The ficin in figs does not survive canning. The prebiotic fiber in chickpeas is altered by high-pressure industrial processing. When the ancient world ate these foods, they ate them in forms that preserved the compounds that made them powerful. Not because they understood the biochemistry, they didn't have that language, but because they ate foods they grew, prepared with their hands, and consumed fresh or fermented or roasted at low temperatures. The processing that strips active compounds from food is almost entirely a phenomenon of the last 100 years. Every major health tradition in human history, Egyptian, Ayurvedic, Chinese, Greco-Roman, biblical, understood intuitively that the way a food is prepared is as important as which food you choose. Modern nutritional science is rediscovering this, compound by compound, with each new paper that confirms what ancient people already knew. Quality is not interchangeable with category. Olive oil is not olive oil. Honey is not honey. Bread is not bread. The difference between what the ancient world ate and what fills the average supermarket aisle bearing the same name is often the difference between medicine and imitation. This is the question that should stay with you after this video ends. If these 7 foods formed one of the most complete nutritional systems ever assembled, and they were simply the foods that grew in one region of the ancient world, what does that suggest about the relationship between human biology and the foods that have surrounded us for the longest time? If this video gave you something worth thinking about, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit like. Subscribe. We put this kind of research together regularly, and we'd rather you find it here than in a supplement store. And drop a comment below. Which meal from this list are you making first? I genuinely want to know.